Years ago, a legendary treasure was lost, so valuable that it could have changed the GDP of entire nations. In modern times, when people had already become plagued with greed like a disease, the truth about this dangerous treasure finally surfaced. The story begins during the American Civil War, a time filled with riots, chaos, and brutal battles. It hardly looked like the country that would one day lead the world's economy. Amid this turmoil, we see a captain loading his ship with goods. Shockingly, the boxes were filled with gold coins and countless gems. No one knew where he had arranged such an enormous amount of gold, but one thing was clear: the entire ship was packed with treasure. The captain signaled his crew to take it away, but they delayed too long, and enemies had already been watching. Before the captain and his men could react, the attackers struck. The ship suffered multiple damages, but it wasn't built for war, it was meant for loading and unloading goods. They couldn't hold off a battle for long. Thinking quickly, the captain ordered all the ship's lights to be turned off, leaving the enemy blind to its location. Using this trick, the ship slipped away through another route and was never seen again. Decades passed, modern times arrived, and few believed the treasure was real. Many dismissed it as a fabricated tale passed down to mislead future generations. In the present day, we meet Dr. Sophia, who travels with her crew to a site in Africa. She had received reports of a dangerous disease spreading there and came to investigate. Accompanied by her senior, she entered a patient's home. The senior was immediately shocked at the patient's condition. The disease had left the man paralyzed, his body covered in strange marks never seen before in any illness. Sophia, however, recognized these symptoms. She had encountered similar cases just last month in several patients. Realizing the disease was spreading rapidly, she knew the WHO had to be informed, as they had no clue about it yet. Sophia told her senior they must send all the reports to the WHO so action could be taken against this outbreak. Though hesitant at first, he eventually agreed. Before leaving, he mentioned they still needed samples from the patient's father, who was at the church. Sophia continued her research independently and went to the church, only to discover the man was already dead. Still, she carefully collected samples from his body for further study. Unbeknownst to her, a masked man had been watching her every move. Moments later, he suddenly attacked Sophia, snatching her bag and running away. Sophia screamed for help, and just then, a man on a nearby boat rushed in to save her. Sophia had fainted for a short while, but luckily the masked man only took one of her bags and didn't harm her. When she finally opened her eyes, she found herself on a boat surrounded by several people who were searching underwater for something. Among them was a man named Duck, the one who had saved her life. Sophia immediately asked Duck to drop her off at the harbor so she could return home, but Duck calmly assured her that she had nothing to fear. He explained that once their search was over, they were heading back to the harbor anyway. Soon, Duck and his team pulled out a very old statue that had been buried in the sea for years. Duck's boss was thrilled by the discovery and ordered him to clean the statue properly, since it was to be showcased in a Nigerian museum. Duck and his crew began preparing for the presentation, and Sophia was also invited. Many important people attended, some of whom Sophia already knew and began conversing with. Meanwhile, Duck met with a Nigerian dealer who was involved in smuggling. The dealer had come to strike a different deal, but when Duck noticed a golden coin in his hand with strange markings, he was stunned. He asked the dealer where he had found it. This was important to Duck because he had been searching for such a coin for years. It was linked to the legendary captain said to have loaded his ship with countless gold coins before it mysteriously vanished at sea. The dealer revealed that he had found the coin in a place called Mali in Africa. Duck immediately realized that the lost ship might be hidden there. During the presentation, the recovered statue was displayed, dazzling the audience with its value. A company owner was also present, speaking with Duck's boss. Sophia approached him as well, gathering as much information as she could. She too needed to go to Mali, since reports suggested that the deadly disease she was researching had originated there. She requested the company owner to arrange her travel and, in return, promised to provide her research findings for free. The owner agreed and made all the necessary arrangements. The next day, when the ship was ready to sail for Mali, Sophia and her crew members joined, explaining that the boss had ordered them to be taken there. Upon arrival, they would part ways. Duck, following his boss's instructions, agreed and took them on board. During the journey, Sophia asked Duck about his mission, and he revealed that he was searching for the long-lost treasure rumored to have vanished with the captain's ship. However, Sophia chose not to share anything about her own research, keeping it a secret. Once they reached Mali, they went their separate ways. Duck immediately sought out the man referred to by the dealer, who was supposed to provide more information about the golden coins. But when Duck arrived, he discovered the man was already dead and no longer lived there. Hopeless, Duck and his companions wondered how they could even begin such a massive search for the coins. As they sat in despair, their attention was drawn to a spiritual site nearby. It was a sacred Muslim place, and for some reason, Duck couldn't shake off a strange feeling about it. Duck went straight into the large record hall, knowing it contained archives spanning hundreds of years, documenting which ships had docked at the harbor and the major events connected to them. Since that legendary ship had been famous even at the time, it was bound to be mentioned in the records. Duck gave a few details to one of the clerks, who soon retrieved a letter describing the ship. According to it, when the vessel eventually returned, everyone on board was already dead. The ship was completely empty of life, and afterward, it drifted toward a nearby island. This gave Duck a clear idea of where to head next. He immediately told James about it and insisted they move forward. When they took their boat to a deserted area, one of their crew members found strange samples that looked like rust. But after examining them closely, he realized it wasn't normal rust at all, it was something else, something that needed closer attention. While they were still discussing this, a Nigerian army patrol boat approached. The soldiers stopped them and demanded to know where the researchers were, the ones Duck had brought earlier, referring to Sophia and her team. The truth was, the company owner had already informed the Nigerian police about Sophia's arrival to research the disease, and the army feared the outbreak might spread further. Their orders were to arrest Sophia and her colleagues before it was too late. Duck quickly understood the situation but pretended to cooperate. He told the officers he could take them to the researchers. Trusting him, the army tied their boat to his. But then Duck suddenly sped up his boat, forcing the army vessel to capsize, and at the right moment, he cut the rope loose. He didn't want the military anywhere near Sophia, because by now, he had started to care about her. Soon after, Duck and his men tried to sail further ahead, but more army boats surrounded them. Trapped, with no clear escape, Duck refused to give up. He jumped onto the enemy boat and fought the soldiers directly. In the chaos, he even risked his own vessel to survive. One soldier kept firing at them, so Duck directed his boat straight at the attacker's vessel, leaping away just before impact. The two boats collided and exploded. Somehow, Duck, James, and one other companion narrowly survived and swam to shore. Exhausted but alive, they made their way to a shelter, thinking the worst was behind them, but in truth, this was only the beginning of a much darker mystery. Duck then told his men they had to protect Sophia and her team at all costs, because if the military reached them first, they would be arrested. He sent his companion Rudy across the border with urgent instructions, while he and James set off toward the researchers. Meanwhile, Sophia and her team, along with her senior, had already arrived at the region in Mali where the disease was believed to have originated. They entered an abandoned village only to discover that more than half its inhabitants were dead, victims of the deadly outbreak. Sophia realized she was in the right place, proper research here might finally uncover the truth. She set up a camp and prepared to begin her work at sunrise, unaware of the danger closing in. By the time Duck and James reached Mali and began looking for her, Sophia was already collecting water samples from a nearly dried-up well, hoping they might hold the answers she needed. Sophia began climbing down into the well, but just then her senior told her that some military soldiers had arrived to talk. He said he would go clear up the misunderstanding, but suddenly the soldiers started firing directly. They killed all of Sophia's crew members, sparing only her senior, and soon a helicopter appeared overhead. Terrified, Sophia slipped and fell deep into the well, unsure how she could ever get out. From the helicopter stepped the cruel dictator, who had already learned about Sophia's presence and came specifically to find her. He asked her senior where the other woman was, but when the senior refused to answer, the dictator killed him on the spot. Now Sophia was the only survivor of her team, trapped inside the deep well, while the dictator ordered his men to find and kill her immediately to prevent the disease from spreading further. Duck and James watched from behind a hill, waiting for the right moment to rescue her, but the real challenge was that Sophia first had to climb out of the well. In such a dangerous situation, escaping a deep well is extremely difficult, but the most effective method is to create pressure with both hands and feet against the walls and slowly climb upward, pausing occasionally to rest. If more than one person is trapped, it becomes easier. By pressing their backs together and pushing their feet against the walls, they can steadily move up. Sophia should have tried this, but just in time Duck and James arrived with a rope to pull her out. Some soldiers spotted them, and one nearly killed Duck, but Sophia managed to climb out in time and shoot the soldier dead. Furious and heartbroken over losing her senior and almost her entire team, Sophia broke down in tears, but Duck reminded her that they needed to escape before the dictator closed in. Agreeing, they left in a car and drove toward a nearby village, only to be captured by hostile locals who took them to their king. The king interrogated them, demanding to know their intentions and suspecting they might be terrorists. Sophia explained that she was researching a deadly disease spreading across the region, which shocked the king. He led them to a large area where countless villagers lay sick with the very same illness Sophia was investigating. After careful examination, she became certain it was indeed the dangerous disease. Determined to find a solution, Sophia began collecting samples with Duck and other helpers, even studying the villagers' food and water supplies. Soon, her research revealed that the local water source had become toxic. The water contained certain ingredients that were making people even sicker, and Sophia began to suspect that it couldn't have become toxic on its own. Someone must have deliberately contaminated it to spread illness among the locals. Together with Duck, she tried to trace the source of the water, and thanks to their relentless effort, the king granted them permission to stay until they could find a solution to the disease. The king, deeply troubled by the loss of so many of his people, fully supported Sophia and Duck in their mission. Meanwhile, James was shown playing games with some of the local children, enjoying himself until the ball rolled away toward a nearby cave. Curious, James went inside and was stunned to notice drawings carved on the walls. He immediately told Duck and Sophia, who came to examine them. The images turned out to be ancient artwork etched into the stone, and after careful decoding, they discovered references to the same legendary ship Duck had been searching for, the treasure ship that had vanished years ago. The drawings clearly showed that the ship was buried in a desert that had once been filled with water but later dried up. They also revealed that a fortress existed in that desert, connected by a waterway to the sea. Duck speculated that something inside the fortress might be contaminating the water, and they decided to investigate. Without delay, Duck, Sophia, and James set off on their journey across the scorching desert, traveling for hours under the blistering heat until they finally reached the ancient fortress standing in the middle of the sands. Nearby, Duck noticed a massive solar power plant, which surprisingly belonged to the same company owner who had supported Sophia earlier at the party. This made Duck suspicious. Why had they chosen this specific location for such a facility? While pondering this, they spotted a train in the desert. The three of them hid until the right moment, then jumped aboard, unnoticed by the many soldiers riding it. Meanwhile, Rudy was conducting his own research and found strange rust on his clothes from the site where their boat had been destroyed. Combining and testing the samples, he was shocked at the rapid results and reported them to his superior, who realized immediate strict action was needed. Back in the desert, Duck, Sophia, and James infiltrated the solar power plant, which was not only massive on the surface but also had an underground facility. As they went deeper, they discovered the place was producing large amounts of radioactive chemicals that could only be created under very specific temperature conditions, explaining why the site had been chosen. They soon noticed containers being transported down into the basement, so the three of them followed and opened one of the inner chambers, discovering extremely toxic chemicals harmful to humans. Many people were being forced to work there, and some of the chemicals were leaking directly into a nearby river. Sophia realized this was the very reason the water had turned toxic and why the deadly disease was spreading. Illegal operations were being run under the cover of the solar power plant. Outraged, she and Duck knew they had uncovered something huge. Meanwhile, Rudy arrived with his boss at the US Embassy, presenting his research and warning that if action wasn't taken immediately, the outbreak could spread across the entire nation. Soon it was revealed that Sophia, Duck, and James had been captured after security alarms gave away their location, and the company's owner personally confronted Sophia. She lashed out, demanding to know why he was deliberately making people sick. Calmly, the owner insisted it was simply a solar plant where chemicals were produced for research. Sophia explained that his radioactive chemicals were being dumped into the river, causing the disease that no one yet had a cure for. Shocked, the owner claimed he had no idea they were so dangerous and went to confront the dictator, asking why the plant's waste was being disposed of this way. The dictator bluntly told him that if he wanted to shut down the plant, he could, but all the money from the contract must still be paid. Under this pressure, the owner had no choice but to continue. Meanwhile, Duck and James were thrown into a truck with their hands cuffed, likely headed toward a grim punishment. Using his golden coin, Duck loosened a screw and managed to escape with James, though they were still bound and weighed down. They had no choice but to travel on foot across the desert until they stumbled upon a crashed plane. Though its engine was destroyed, the tires were intact, and with some ingenuity, they managed to get it rolling and, with the help of the wind, pushed forward faster. Eventually, they reached a village where Duck contacted his boss to report everything and get directions. Trading his golden coin for a jeep, Duck drove straight back to the original village where the disease was worst. He and James knew Sophia was being held by the company's owner and that the solar plant was the true cause of the outbreak, so they had to shut it down and rescue her. Realizing he couldn't do it alone, Duck asked the local king for help, but the king refused, questioning what benefit it would bring his people. After thinking hard, Duck offered the king his advanced jeep in exchange for support. Satisfied, the king agreed and provided forces. With a solid plan in place, Duck and James set out directly for the gates of the solar power plant. Several security guards blocked their way, but Duck and James didn't back down. Raising their weapons, they forced the guards to retreat and pushed deeper inside the plant. The sudden breach didn't go unnoticed. Within seconds, alarms began to blare across the facility. The owner had been alerted and immediately triggered the emergency lockdown, determined that no one would escape with the truth. As Duck and James moved through the massive structure, they realized something was wrong. The factory floor, once filled with workers and machinery in constant motion, was now eerily silent. Not a single worker remained. Computers hummed, conveyor belts stood frozen, and half-eaten lunches still sat abandoned on tables, as if everyone had disappeared in an instant. Panels and screens, scanning for any sign of activity or sabotage. His eyes widened in shock as he realized the countdown on the main reactor was almost finished. A catastrophic blast was imminent. The company owner had clearly planned this. He believed that if the world discovered the connection between his solar plant and the spreading disease, authorities would shut down all his operations across the country. To prevent any evidence from being exposed, he had decided the only solution was to destroy the entire plant. James didn't waste a second. He dashed toward the basement, where the reactor's main control systems were located. Each step echoed through the empty halls, the metallic clang amplifying the tension. Meanwhile, Duck looked up and spotted a helicopter landing on the rooftop, its rotors chopping violently through the thick air. Inside, the owner had captured Sophia, preparing to take her away. Adrenaline surged through Duck. He sprinted toward the helicopter, weapons ready, knowing he had only moments to intercept it. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind him. It was the man in black, the same mysterious figure who had attacked Sophia earlier. He lunged with lightning speed, forcing Duck into a fierce close-quarters fight. Punches, kicks, and parries collided in a blur of motion. Duck's training and reflexes were tested to the absolute limit, and Sophia, despite being weak from exhaustion, found the strength to join in, striking at the intruder with everything she had. Meanwhile, James worked frantically in the basement, overriding security locks and disarming explosives attached to the main reactor. Sweat poured down his face as he typed codes at lightning speed, bypassing layer after layer of firewalls and automated defenses. Every second counted, the countdown was at mere minutes, and a single mistake could mean total annihilation. With a final keystroke, James successfully halted the reactor sequence. The dangerous chemical containment alarm ceased, and the plant system slowly returned to a safe state. Duck, still locked in combat with the man in black, finally managed to disarm him with a precise maneuver, sending him sprawling across the concrete floor. As the dust settled, Sophia was freed from the helicopter's grip. Duck grabbed her arm, pulling her to safety, while James emerged from the basement, exhausted but victorious. The plant, though still a potential hazard, was no longer an immediate threat. They stood together amidst the wreckage and silence, adrenaline fading into relief. The mission wasn't over. Sophia still needed protection, the owner would not give up easily, and the toxic disease threat still loomed, but for the first time in hours, they had survived. And now, with the knowledge of the plant's secrets and the golden coin in Duck's possession, they had the means to strike back. Sophia and Duck managed to defeat the man by any means necessary and quickly got into a jeep to drive away. The problem wasn't over yet, as another helicopter was hovering above, carrying the region's dictator, who likely wanted to kill them. He immediately began surrounding them, and the attack caused the sand to shift violently, creating massive explosions. Suddenly, Duck looked ahead and was shocked. Due to the tremors in the ground, the long-lost, ancient ship he had been searching for had emerged. The dictator continued attacking from above, so they all took refuge inside the ship. Duck couldn't believe that what he had been searching for had finally appeared here. The dictator's army began arriving at the site, but Duck first noticed countless golden coins, all intact, worth millions of dollars on the market. Observing the massive army, Duck and his companions realized there was an old cannon nearby. They took it out, loaded it with gunpowder, and fired directly at the helicopter, destroying it instantly. For some unknown reason, after this action, many of the army officers dropped their weapons. As they retreated in fear, it became clear that these were actually the king's soldiers sent to help them. Everything was now under control. Later, the business owner responsible for the toxic chemicals was shown enjoying himself in another country, but an agent gave him water contaminated with the same disease-causing toxins from Africa, ensuring that he would also die from the disease. Meanwhile, Duck lived peacefully with Sophia, and all the gold from the ship was given to the people of Africa who needed it the most to recover from the disease. And that's where the story ends.